Greetings and welcome to Flanagan's EcoLogic. I am your host, Ted Flanagan, and this week my guest is Geoff Stapleton, joining us from Australia. He is a force in the solar industry. He is the Director of International Training for Global Sustainability Energy Solutions. He is also the Executive Officer of the Sustainable Energy Industry Association of the Pacific Islands. Delighted to have Geoff on the podcast today. Hi, Geoff, how are you?
Very good. Thank you very much, Ted, for the wonderful introduction.
Well, it's great to have met you a couple weeks back, and as I said, you are a force. So you come with a reputation. So fantastic. Let me start off with something simple for our listeners. Where are you based right now? I think you're in New South Wales. Is that correct?
Yep, I'm 3.5 hours south of Sydney. So in your speak, it'd be about 180 miles, if I've worked that out correctly.
And is it Lake Tabourie? Am I pronouncing that correctly? Lake Tabourie?
Lake Tabourie.
Tabourie. And have you lived there for a long time?
Since end of 89, we built the house. Yeah.
That qualifies. That's a long time by me. And what are you working on this week?
Well, one, I was putting together a short course for our good friend Johnny Wise and his, training project. And after this one, I run a session on standards for our members in the Pacific. And
very good.
We're doing a lot of work there in standards and government meetings with trainers later today. So all my work is focused around the Pacific.
And I know that we had to schedule this podcast before the ski season starts, because once it starts, you're not available.
Yeah, it's snowing down there right now, actually. So yep, but it's school holidays, so I don't go down during the school holidays.
Wait till the kids go back to school. I mean, yeah, that's great. So let's go all the way back. You've been in the solar industry in Australia since 1988. I think you started out at BP Solar Australia. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. I actually sort of specialised in solar in my final year of electrical engineering in 1981. I fortunately met Martin Green and his solar group. But yeah, it was 82 when I left university. The industry was a little bit small back then. So yes, it was 88 before I got my first job in the industry.
And at that time, what was the solar industry like in Australia? I mean, it was obviously very young. Yeah,
there would have been about probably 100 people scattered around the country doing off-grid systems. So some would have been doing other things besides just that. We had two manufacturers. We had BP Solar and SolarX. Both had factories in Sydney. But that was back in the days when changed into US dollars, it would have been about $8 or $9 a watt. And it was
and now what is it, under $1?
Oh, way under $1, yes.
Way under $1, yeah.
Yes.
But you said, did it largely start off as an off-grid phenomenon?
Oh, it was just all off-grid.
All off-grid, yeah.
Yeah, I remember we put in the first grid-connected system in New South Wales, and that was in 1993. And that went on as a sort of a test case for the university. And it was really you probably could have still counted all the grid-connected systems on two hands up to about the year 2000. It was after that the industry took off on grid connect.
Yeah. Now you headed up a company, Southern Solar Australia, for about 20 years, if I've done my research correctly. Is that right?
Yeah. It maintained as a company from that, but it's probably fair to say that most of the work it did was just done up to about the year 2000. So and that company, we designed and installed off-grid systems and solar water pumping systems for the farmers.
It sounds like you were doing PV, you were doing wind, you were doing microhydro, you were doing diesel. I mean, pretty much however you could support somebody off-grid to have power.
Yeah, because that's right. Many of the people were already on diesel generators, and putting them, for some of them, we just actually first put in batteries and inverter chargers.
Yeah.
That gave 24-hour power, because of the cost of solar. So that was more cost effective for them, particularly the bigger farms.
And you were very early in that industry, is that correct?
Yes. There was a few of us, but yes, there was a
Must have been very happy. You must have been a magician in many people's eyes.
Yep, it was a struggle. I think it'd be fair to say that probably nearly every solar business in the 90s, if we were honest to ourselves, we're probably technically bankrupt most of the time, but we survived. Yeah, yeah, but yeah, yeah, but the customers are always very appreciative, of suddenly having lights at night without a noise in the background.
Yeah, the generator cranking away. You put in the battery, and even today, people are running their generators when they need to, and then storing up and having the battery run them through the night in the rural applications. But now New South Wales is one of the most developed provinces in Australia, is it not?
Oh, correct. That's where Sydney is, and that's where
But nevertheless, there was still a lot of off-grid customers.
Well, that's right. Like I think I mentioned the other week that we had this subsidy program in the early 90s to make up for the people who were not on the grid, because a study in 84 showed that 5% of the state's consumers used 3% of the energy, but had 74% of the power lines by kilometre. So the government, cross-subsidised they were. So
what did the government do for the off-grid folks then at that point?
They could get a 50% grant up to $15,000 for a $30,000 system back then. Okay. And then it actually jumped to 2/3. So they had to have a quote of more than $20,000 from the grid. I'm talking Australian dollars here, and that was only not even a kilometre.
Right.
Yeah. So
now, are most of those people hooked up to the grid at this point, or?
No. All my customers were people who didn't have access to the grid, and the old funny thing is, everyone thought they were just hippies, but I had judges. I had the head of the Murdoch media, because he lived 7 kilometres from the grid. And things like that. So no, these were just people who had nice properties but had no access to getting the grid put onto their house for various reasons, or not cheap. Yeah.
So you were designing, installing, maintaining them also?
Yep.
Do you still have some of those legacy systems still operating?
That's why we kept Southern Solar going to 2010, because the customers would still ring me. So I probably did my last installation probably 2001. So no, I probably last spoke to one of the customers probably about 2012, 2013.
Yeah. Now, what size were the panels that were going in? Today we're looking at 450 watt panels routinely.
The maximum module, even by the year 2000, was 75 watts.
75 watts.
They fit under your arm quite easily. None of this being blown around by the wind.
Right.
So no. I think SolarX might have had an 80 watter by that stage. But yeah.
And that was a big deal. My goodness, how we've grown as an industry. You were a lecturer at the University of New South Wales for a number of years, and what were you teaching then? Was it off-grid systems? Or?
Yeah, design of off-grid systems. Yep.
Electrical engineering and off-grid systems.
Well, no, it was actually the School of Renewable Engineering. So University of New South Wales was one of the first ones in the world to offer an undergraduate degree in PV, renewable energy.
Yeah.
So that started in 2000. In Australia, like you have the NABCEP scheme, we have a technician scheme that got started in 93 it was launched, 92 it started being planned. And so people were coming out of university after 4 years, but they still had to get their accreditation. So I was running the course for them to be able to apply for their accreditation. Now, I know in the US you accredit bodies and certified people, but here in Australia, we, as an industry association, we can't use the word certification. We had to use the word accreditation. So I won't go into the politics of that, but yes. So,
okay.
So it's been one of those discussions over the years with many Americans. You're doing it wrong down there.
But I think this has been a big theme of your career, right? Is accreditation and training and certification. And I think you're going to tell me that Australia has been pretty advanced in its approach to to training and standards, right?
Yeah, correct. Look, and we all did it in the 90s to give our industry credibility. I think the older people in the industry would remember the time when nobody trusted solar because you had the shonky salespeople, as we'd say, go through and promise people, 8 modules will run your whole house, and install a system and disappear. So solar had a bad name. People didn't really trust it. So to build that trust, we worked on having technicians who were trained and that were sort of licensed in a sort of a way. We had guidelines, but look, if you designed an off-grid system and that customer changed his loads and the system fell over, if you didn't document it or keep it, have some way you designed it to, the judge will always believe the customer over a salesperson. Simple rule of business. So to protect our own industry and also to protect the customers from the bad salespeople, we made sure we brought in standards that systems had to be designed to, installed to, and the industry association at the time was running the training for people, but we knew that couldn't last. And in Australia, we have an Australian quality training framework. So people who are trained as plumbers are trained the same all around the country, or electricians. So we were able to get solar into that framework in the late 90s.
And that was well ahead of the United States, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. So like I reckon all that came a bit later. Johnny was already running with SCI, running their training. But I used to spend a lot of time over there with a fellow, the late and wonderful Mark Fitzgerald, who was actually trying to set up the accreditation of training programs. So I worked with him a lot in China and Asia on this. So during the 90s, though I was running a solar business, I was the New South Wales president. So I was very involved with getting all these things in place. And when I started working overseas, helping companies, they said, well, they heard about what we did in Australia, and suddenly I was doing what we did in Australia and around the world, in Africa and now in the Pacific. So, it was one of those things that at least I knew how to do it. And not a lot of people want to work in this part, but it's that part of the industry that needs to be working behind the scenes to get things happening.
Right. And to make it legitimate, make it something. And there were probably a lot of solar companies that were coming and going at that time, right?
Oh, correct. Yeah. And they said still, and look, when I started traveling through Africa and that, I kept on hearing the same thing. Solar doesn't work. Solar doesn't work because of people being overpromised. That's really what it boils down to. You overpromise of what a system could do.
Now, I know you're just warming up in your career, but just out of curiosity, how many countries do you think you've worked in?
I've worked in 39.
Okay.
The only reason I know that is because I worked it out for Johnny, the presentation I just did for Johnny. I might not have known that off the top of my head a week ago, but I did today, yes.
Yeah. Well, that's impressive. Okay, so you became the managing director of GSES, Global Sustainability Energy Solutions. And can you describe what that organization does, please?
Right. Well, when we first started, it was just to take expertise overseas, and actually the idea was actually to work with small solar companies, say in Sri Lanka or Indonesia, and help them design systems. One of the things back then was the lucrative market was telecommunications. Your big companies like SolarX and BP would go into the countries and say, we're the only ones that can do that. So we wanted to go in to help the small companies that were there say, no, we can help you do that. We've been doing it in Australia. So that's what it was originally planned for. Lo and behold, we end up turned in 2 years' time to help in Sri Lanka with their training and rules and regs. And so the company suddenly took the different direction. But nowadays, the company is we've got a design team. So we are doing engineering design for mainly grid-connected systems, which is the main market now in Australia. We helped the government set up an inspection regime many years ago, 15 years ago. So systems are randomly inspected, funded by the government to ensure they're going in correctly. So we have team that manages inspections. That's been going since 2010. And then we're also what we call a private training organisation, accredited by the government. So we're about to go through that accreditation. So what will I be doing? I've got to make sure we meet the standards, because new standards actually only came out last week for our registered training organisation. And myself, I've been the international person. So for the last 25 years, I think I used to work out, before COVID, I'd spend 450 hours a year on aeroplanes.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. So
45-hour weeks I spent sitting on a plane. Yeah.
Oh, God bless you. And so is GSES a for-profit company then?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've been the director of the international training for about 3 years.
Yeah. So I stepped down as managing director 3 years ago to take on that voluntary role of executive officer for the industry association in the Pacific Islands.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that role. What is that? I mean, I think of SEIA in the United States, Solar Energy Industries Association. Is it the same kind of a thing? It's a trade association.
Yes. Yeah. It's a trade.
Are you affiliated or just have the same name?
Well, our name is actually the Sustainable Energy Industries Association of the Pacific Islands.
Unlike the solar. Okay, gotcha.
So we got the word sustainable because energy efficiency is what we also want to focus on for some of the countries. So that's where that comes in. So it's the same as like there's two associations in Australia, which I was heavily involved with. So the link we do have, we are members of the Global Solar Council, which SEIA is a member, and many other industry associations. So that's an international body overseeing all the different associations. So but the challenge we have is we're talking 22 countries. Take Papua New Guinea out of the mix, which is about 10 or 12, 11 million people. If you count them right, it's probably a lot more. But out of those other 20 countries, you're only talking 3.5 million people scattered across a very big water area.
So then, I mean, your career, your initial part of your career certainly was in Australia.
Yeah.
But then you developed, I guess, with your expertise, you became a resource for all the Pacific Islands. Is that sort of the way it worked?
Yeah. And like I was prior to COVID, I was doing a lot of work in Uganda, West Africa.
Yeah.
But now since COVID, as we say, there was BC and after C. So all I've focused on now is mainly the Pacific, even though I did help Malaysia again last year. They wanted to set up a new training center, and I'd done a lot of work there in the past. So we've set up a technician program already. We've got guidelines. Most countries are now following the different, like the North Pacific follows the NEC. The South Pacific follows the Australian, New Zealand installation standards in general. And our big focus has been trying to establish, in-country training. Our company's done a lot of training in the Pacific, but that can't be the long-term sustainability. So that's our big focus over the last, probably 10 years. Yeah.
Give us an idea of some of the North Pacific islands that are part of this Pacific Islands. What countries would those be?
You got Republic of Marshall Islands, Federated States of Micronesia, Palau. Guam tends to be fine by themselves. I duck in there every now and then and talk to the industry, but Guam is very more linked to Hawaii in those places. But particularly Palau, FSM, and Marshall Islands. So I'm working in Marshalls and FSM at the moment for the World Bank. Most of the solar work up there is done by the utilities. There will be a few private companies, but not many, except the companies coming in to put in. But there's a lot of solar going into those by different World Bank's funding a lot of systems in FSM and Marshalls over the next few years. And I've been asked to look at to try to see if we can set up a solar apprenticeship program for the utilities. So
Interesting.
so it's a bit of a challenge because there's never been an electrician's apprenticeship program.
Well, that's one of the challenges, but you're going to all of these different countries. You're dealing with different rules, different regulations, different cultures, different languages, I presume.
Yes.
And all over thousands of miles of radius, right? Or distance.
And expensive getting between the islands.
Yeah.
Like the cost of trying to service systems in the outer islands could be more than the system costs.
Right.
So so working out O&M long term for each country is different.
And talk a little bit about the South Pacific Islands. And I think you mentioned that you're helping to develop a training center on Fiji right now. Is that right?
Yep. So 20 years ago, we wrote another American named Herb Wade, has basically been based in the Pacific for the last 40 years. So that's why he's probably not that well known in the industry in the US, but he's been very active in the Pacific. Him and I wrote a report for the UNDP, United Nations Development Program, 2005, which was around for solar in the Pacific. We really needed a resource training center, say in Fiji, that could support all the other countries. And over the years, there's been reports and studies, but nothing ever got done with what we wrote 20 years ago. So after COVID, I'd had enough, and we decided to go looking for philanthropic money, and we did, fortunately. Can't name the organisation, but we partnered up with the University of South Pacific. They have a technical college, so they had spare room, but they didn't have any spare land area, but they didn't have any spare classrooms. Yeah. So we're actually building a brand new building. Started literally last month, be finished in January next year, weather permitting, and that will be called the Pacific Regional Sustainable Energy Training Centre.
Fantastic.
So that's my main big project at the moment.
And Fiji is how far from you in miles or kilometers?
Us in Australia, we often measure things by flight time. So it's about a 4.5 hour flight from Sydney.
That's right. I just visited Australia for the first time this year, and I'm just stunned by the magnitude of it all. Really, it's incredible.
Well, that's right. I ran a conference once in Alice Springs, and everyone was wondering why I kept on talking flight times. I said, well, you're not going to drive it. So, So Fiji, and well, there's a lot of Americans now own property in Fiji. You may or might not know it's a very popular place for Americans. And so there's probably some days there'd be 5 flights a day between Sydney and Fiji.
And I think there's direct flights from LAX right here where I am to Fiji.
There's direct flights from LA, San Francisco, Vancouver, and I can't remember which one of the Texas airports, but I can't remember if it's Houston or Dallas, but one of those. Yep.
Yeah. So what will your role be? And you've catalyzed this center. You figured out you got the funding. Congratulations. But what will your role be as going forward?
Well, they're just hiring the first trainer, so I'll be training that person.
Yeah.
We'll get another trainer next year when it opens, so we'll be supporting them. We'll doing the plan to how to make sure it's sustainable, and because it'll be a fee for service training center, and then working out all the different delivery models for training. And we will have a high-tech room because you might only want 2 people in one country, 3 in another that need training at any one time. So you can't fly a trainer to there, or you can't fund them to come and stay in Fiji. Yep. That just gets too expensive. So it's looking at all the different models. So we are working with a lot of other little training centres that are in each country. So some countries would have a big enough market to run training courses themselves. Others would not. So it's then doing the plan country by country. And
what has been is there one country in your career? You mentioned 39 countries overall. Is there one country that was the most difficult to deal with, or what were your biggest challenges when you look back?
I would say the hardest country to work in, and still is just north of us, called Papua New Guinea.
Okay.
That is just like
It didn't take you long to come up with that answer either.
Well, Herb Wade refuses to ever work there. He says, I've spent enough time in that country and they just don't get on with it, so I'm not wasting any more of my life in that country. So for some reason, it struggles. It's just a country that, and it's, there'd be 8 million people who are not connected to the electricity in that country. So I know sub-Saharan Africa, and it's the big numbers, but right next door to Australia is only 20% of 11 million people have access to electricity.
Wow.
And some people say only 10% at any one time. With the amount of blackouts they have. So, and we've done a lot of work up there that just doesn't progress.
I'm guessing my view of the world is that everywhere you go, there's terrifically nice people. Most
Correct.
of the people are just terrific. Most are terrific, but there must be some fundamental lack of disorder, fundamental lack of order in that country. And then without sufficient training and without an industry that's sufficiently mature, you end up with all sorts of problems, right? I mean, you end up with fault systems not working, even fires on rooftop, that kind of thing, right?
Well, fortunately, P&G is big enough, and they actually have their own industry association now, and I work closely with them. So there are a few good companies up there, mainly being run by expats.
Yeah.
We call them, that language, but and there's a lot of programs going in up there, putting in systems. Our government's funding a lot of mini grids, rural mini grids at the moment up there, and there's been programs for plug and play solar home systems using the Lighting Global or now Verisol program.
Now, Confucius would say to us that we should never compare and contrast, right? Just making those distinctions gets us all into trouble. Right. We all get into trouble, but at the risk of getting into trouble, what countries have been really easy to work with?
To answer that, it's generally with the individuals you're working with, more so than the country. Right, so the people in P&G are good. It's just their bureaucracy is just that. So we had a really good person we worked with in Ghana. We got a lot done there over 20 years, working on there off there. So I used to go into these countries and look for people running solar businesses, and then it doesn't take long to work out that they're there for the right reasons, not just there to make money. And therefore, most of those are people who then wanted to try to do the best thing by their country by getting things into place like training centres and quality. So every time I had people like that in countries, Uganda, we had a really good one there as well.
Yeah,
things get done. Kenya,
champions, I guess.
Yeah. We have a business in India, and all I can say is India took the bureaucracy of the UK and multiplied it by 10.
That ain't good.
So bureaucracy in India can be a bit of a challenge in running a company up there. But so we have a training centre up there as well.
Well, let's come all the way back to Australia, the land down under, and talk a little bit. I think you told me the other day or a couple of weeks ago when we spoke that about 33% of Australians have solar systems on their houses. Is that right?
Correct.
And so you've seen it in your career. You've seen it going from 0 to 33%. And what has that done? Is that almost too much capacity now?
Yes, it has. That has caused, forget feeding tariffs. Nobody wants your solar during the middle of the day.
Yeah, zero export value, and then during the middle of the day.
Yeah, because they have. But majority of the governments and utilities here are very forward thinking now. So they've been putting in large storage. They're even investing in encouraging large solar farms here as well. And we have a very generous battery rebate program that came in on the 1st of July. Yeah. And that is all to how to absorb all this solar. There's no need for any ever new coal-fired power station. If anything, some of them are turning themselves off because they don't see the future themselves. Yeah. So the worst problem was, of course, we've had governments who don't believe in renewables. Meanwhile, the country was. they didn't do any planning for the transition. So that's some of the problems we face at the moment is not having proper, like some of the coal-fired power stations said, we'll need you until 2040 or this type of thing. None of that planning was done of as the growth happens, how's the grid still going to be maintained? So that's caused a few issues, but no, the industry is just booming at the moment, particularly now with the battery rebate.
And can you get a rebate for systems that are solar systems that are already in existence, as well as when you put in a new system and you pair it with solar?
Look, we've had the renewable energy certificates, so utilities had to buy so many renewables. So those certificates have always reduced the price for solar by a few thousand. We have companies that act as brokers. Buy your certificate, buy the customer certificate off you and sell it to a utility. So there's a brokerage going on. So that has been going on since 2000. That was the help of the boom of the start was that. So yes, so then now we have the batteries to absorb. So there's all these rules that the batteries got to be applied to systems that meet certain standards, because our standards keep changing. So my rooftop system on my roof above me now would not meet the current standards. So if I wanted to put a battery in, because I haven't done it yet, because I was waiting for the prices to come down, to be honest. I put my first system in '97 on the roof, so I've had grid connected for a long time.
So you'd have to upgrade your current system to put it.
The whole system would have to be replaced. So we are planning to do that in the next 12 months.
Yeah. And can people put in batteries with no solar?
No, because the whole purpose is to absorb all that excess solar. However, the subsidy is also being applied for off-grid systems.
Yep.
That's one thing we made sure that that off-grid market didn't get forgotten. That happens sometimes.
A couple more things that we're here we are. We could talk forever, especially if we had a little bit of beer, I guess. But I want you to talk about your online solar museum project, because this sounds like it's just something that's just coming from your heart. And given your tenure in the solar industry, talk about that a little bit.
Look, it came out of the fact that there's a body called the International Solar Energy Society. So it's been around since the 50s. Started in the US. The first solar ever exhibition was '54 in Arizona. So that's when this society started. And it had its first international conference in Melbourne in 1970. So in 2020, we plan to celebrate 50 years of the Solar World Congresses, and in Melbourne, bring it back to Melbourne. But we all know what happened that year, and we had to cancel that conference, and we were planning an exhibition to do a bit of history of the industry. So during that year, we decided, well, why don't we start looking at what we could do online, having an online solar museum. So it has different galleries in it, and I'm happy to say probably the PV gallery is the best one of it at the moment, and that could be a bit of bias by me, but it was also because of Charlie Gay. Charlie Gay had a lot of stuff because he put together a solar thing at the Smithsonian in Washington in 2016. So he had already collected a lot of the stuff and was able to give it to me. And Larry Kosmersky also had a lot of interviews that he'd done over the years. So it's a virtual museum. The only problem we've got at the moment, it takes about a minute to load up, but once you're in there, you can move around. So we have a gallery on PV, a gallery on PV in developing countries. That was pretty much my bias to make sure that didn't get forgotten. And then we have solar thermal, we have solar architecture, and there's a couple of us. I'm trying to think what they all are, but some of those ones need more work. I just sort of tried to collect information. So it's an ongoing project, but there's videos of Bell's press announcement of '54 when they developed the modern day solar cell. So things like that are in there. The talk of the first satellite that went up in '58 with solar on it. So we sort of focus on the first of everywhere. That type of thing when things happen for the first time. So.
And this has been a labor of love for you to put this together, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, awesome. And I can see why, but I wanted to end up with you talking a little bit about this Order of Australia award that you got, which it seems like a big deal. and somehow they picked you. I'm just kidding. Obviously,
Yeah, look, yeah,
well-deserved award. But what is it? What is that award?
yeah, well, look, yeah, probably go through history. 50 years ago, under our first Labor government, our what we call Democrat government after the war, got rid of knighthoods. So we used to have knighthoods in Australia because of our British links. So then they introduced these Order of Australia, and there's 4 levels of orders. So the highest one's the one above what I got, and I got the second level, and that's recognises people who have, distinguished themselves across different areas and not just sort of so somebody might get an award just for their work in medical only in, say, one hospital, that type of thing. And then there's 4. So I got the Order of Australia. Somebody had to nominate me. It goes through a nomination process and vetting process. So yes, so I got that awarded to me on the 9th of June. There was 31 people in Australia got that level of the award. 14 the top, 31 there. So yep. So
well, I'm sorry we can't call you Sir Geoff Stapleton. It's got a ring to it. It comes right off the tongue nicely.
I do laugh though. We're now legally able to put behind our name AO, meaning.
You do.
Australia. So I just wondered why we put adults only behind our name. But anyway, for those who remember those classifications in movies, yes.
My last question is all about balance. I know you're an avid skier. I know you've got family. I know you've got grandchildren. You're just at a family vacation in Fiji. If you had to give advice to some young people entering their career about how to maintain balance and how to maintain creativity and freshness and innovation, and what would you say?
Is planning ahead. Like work can really tie you up if you wanted it to. So I actually book my holidays 12 months in advance. So as soon as somebody says, they ring me in June, say, can you come and do this next February? I go, no, I've already got a holiday planned. So lock it in. But look, to be fair, that really only started about 2008. Prior to that, in growing the business, I had to work a lot. Right. I've always worked from home. I haven't worked from an office for 30 odd years. So we have an office in Sydney where the staff is, and I visit them occasionally. I was there this week, a couple of days ago. But so when I'm home, I'm home. I'm not leaving home in the morning to go to an office. I'm home. So I think over the years it's probably balanced out that but planning and making sure you take that leave and plan things with the family.
Yeah, great stuff. Hey, Geoff, thanks so much for being on the podcast. Great conversation.
Yep, no, my pleasure. And thank you very much for inviting me.
You're welcome.